Fly those flags. Thank you.
Well, I'm not quite sure how he convinced everybody, including the cabinet members, to wave those flags quite as enthusiastically as they have been at various parts of the speech, not least now. They very much have. It's clearly a device that they've decided to try to use. I think it worked. You know how much I'm kind of squeamish about flag waving generally, no matter how it comes, apart from sport. But I think it just about works. The Prime Minister being greeted on stage and given a quick peck on the cheek and a hug by his wife, Victoria, Lady Victoria Starmer. Huge applause from the auditorium as well. I'll talk to Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, in just a few minutes. She's in the auditorium at the moment, just taking it all in for us, and so she'll need to get out to a quieter place to broadcast with us in a few minutes. But when the applause has stopped, which it will in a minute, I think they go down onto the conference floor now, I think, to meet people and to, I think, be congratulated about that speech in the conference, because it's been very well received. I would say a couple of things about it, and I can discuss them with Natasha when she's ready to speak to us. I think the last 15 to 20 minutes of it were really, really good and really strong in refuting racism, basically, and in making the distinction, which should be an easy distinction to make, but sometimes people struggle with it, I'm not sure why, that there is a difference between pride in your country and racism that amounts to an antipathy to people who aren't from here, or are from here and are black or brown. And I think he outlined that difference very well. There is a difference to flag waving because you're proud of your country, and flag waving or erecting a flag and then writing so-and-so's out. One is pride and one is racism, and he's right to make that distinction. I thought he was strong on Broken Britain. At the end, the idea of a Broken Britain, and using real lived examples of people, many of whom were in the audience, young teenage girl from Barnet who set up a girls' football team, a young woman called Melanie who runs a social place for carers, and the list went on and on. He talked about the swagger of Oasis, the grit of the Lionesses, the strength of the Red Roses, and that we can renew this country. I thought there was a lot of confidence in those last 20 minutes there, connecting the dots really between ordinary day-to-day lives and what government can do for it, for people in their day-to-day lives. I mean, speeches like that never really solve anything when it comes to the renewal of a country, but they can certainly change the mood. And that was a world away, I think, in mood from that rather depressing Rose Garden speech that the Prime Minister gave shortly after becoming Prime Minister. Let's get more reaction now from Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor. About an hour long, all told. He had a really good warm-up act in Margaret Aspinall from the Hillsborough Family Support Group. Your sense of it after listening to the whole thing inside the auditorium?
Yes, Sheila, that was a really powerful speech from the Prime Minister, one of the most passionate I think that I've seen him give, starting off, like you said, with that heartfelt introduction by the Hillsborough campaigner. And I thought that set the message that I'm sure Number 10 will be telling us later, the tone that this is a Prime Minister that keeps his promises and gets on with that delivery. That's exactly the sort of thing that they want us to be taking away from this speech. So he started setting out his mission of what national renewal actually is, because at the moment it is a bit of just a slogan that we see outside the conference hall, that we see on these Labour Party posters. But what does it actually mean? I think he did a really good job today of setting out what the country should and could look like, why it is so special to him, and very much a rallying cry to unite not just his party, but to unite the country, to fight reform, to fight Nigel Farage. He talked about that fork in the moment, hitting out at Nigel Farage, his divisive nature, stirring the pot, a snake oil merchant, but also hitting out at the left of politics as well, saying that those who promise tax cuts that are magical and that pay for themselves, a Labour Party that can't control spending, cannot govern in our time, defending that tough approach to the finances, which we're going to be hearing much more about in the few months to come as we head up for that very difficult budget. And a warning from Sir Keir Starmer, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough ahead, difficult decisions. We're not out of the woods yet. There was close to an apology, I thought there, Sheila, for businesses, for putting up national insurance. He acknowledged that had been a really difficult thing for them to take. Acknowledging too that there is such a lack of trust in politics at the moment, talking about how the status quo wasn't working for people, that globalisation hasn't worked, that politicians need to be better, but insisting that Britain isn't broken, that antidote to what Nigel Farage talks about all the time, that there's much to love about this country, that there's a vision of hope, rebuilding, renewal, positivity, increased living standards, community, a better NHS. This is what Keir Starmer has needed to say that we can look forward to for potentially the last year and a half. And I think this is the first time that we've had a bit more of an uplifting speech. And actually, when I saw some of the pre-briefs of what Keir Starmer was going to say, I thought, oh my goodness, more doom and gloom from the Prime Minister. But actually, that was far more uplifting than I was expecting. And some big cheers in the hall today as well, Sheila, for recognising Palestine, for those moves on child poverty, for the workers' rights bill. And in terms of new policy, a few little bits as well. That new NHS online services we've been talking about today, services from the palm of your hand, and on universities as well. He no longer wants half of all kids to go to university.
I think
Instead,
that's quite significant, isn't it? That's significant, that announcement.
Yeah, 2/3 should go to university or get an apprenticeship. So quite a different
gold standard
change in direction.
A gold standard apprenticeship. And he was talking about them, people with apprenticeships not being, this is me paraphrasing, but not being seen as the lesser choice, that they should be deemed to be participating in that, the absolute top end of our renewal as a country and as a labour market, as a set of skills. It's just, we needed it, didn't we? We needed to hear a bit of this.
Yeah, I think so too. And, on child poverty, I'd been hearing that there was something on the two-child benefit cap. They wanted to nod to it. He didn't quite say that, but he said, they're just at the start of their journey to tackle poverty. Not quite explicit yet, but a hint there that there is more to go, that they will be doing more on this. And I think really, we've heard, and I've heard throughout this conference, Sheila, that people don't really know what the Prime Minister stands for, that they don't know who he is, they don't know what he's fighting for. And I think today was the first step in him starting to outline much more of that for all of those people who say, we don't know what kind of Britain you're fighting for, what kind of Britain you want to build, where do your priorities lie? I think we heard that today. The NHS, public services growth, making people feel better off, repairing that sense of broken Britain, repairing our communities. And you saw it in that hall, complete with all the flags, these little flags that they were giving away, all 4 nations of the UK, and everybody totally getting up and getting involved in that.
I suspect it was more than giving them away. I think quite a few, they were given their marching orders to wave those flags.
Oh, they absolutely were. But it worked, and it worked on several levels. Actually, it really sort of brought the room together. And also, we haven't mentioned Farage yet. Nigel Farage declaring war on him. Incredibly punchy. And we'll be hearing from him in the next hour. We understand it, because Nigel Farage wants to hit back at some of the things that the Prime Minister has been saying about him.
On racism and on the mood around division or unity. And I want the latter, not the former. I thought he was incredibly strong when he said, free speech is a great value of this nation and should be protected. Incitement attached to a flag, essentially, should not be. They are different. And that's an important and simple distinction, but it's not one I've heard him make so clearly and so passionately before. I thought that was a really strong moment. And now on the flag thing, there was a moment, because I was like, initially when I saw them all going, oh, the flags, I was like, oh no, I can't bear watching half the cabinet sort of reluctantly wave their little flags. But the moment when he really went for it about racism, there was a shot on television, which will, I'm no doubt, be on the front page of a paper. There was a shot of him on the stage, and in the foreground, all you could see was flag of St George. All you could see was a sea of them. And if they can get that photograph on the front page of a newspaper, on that issue, not his work is done, but the message is got across. Another thing, I think, and maybe it's to what you said there about preparing us for the tough news to come in the budget, saying, you can't just click here for a new country. It's going to take time and it's going to take work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I thought the flag moment was him taking back control of the flag, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for them. It's not just for the far right. It's not just for Tommy Robinson and people, thugs that he mentioned on marches and violence. It is for all of us.
We will never surrender the flag, he said, didn't he?
Such Churchillian language, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of stuck out to me as well. Declaring war on Nigel Farage today, saying, and I thought one of the best moments of his speeches, saying of his immigration policy, policies, we will fight him with everything that we have. That felt really heartfelt from Sir Keir Starmer today, and doubling down on those attacks, basically accusing him of racist policies, accusing Nigel Farage of running away after Brexit, of only talking the country down, no solutions, like you say, to those hard problems, just, click here for a new country. It's not that simple. That's, we've heard that from a lot of politicians over the last few years, but arguably from Sir Keir Starmer, I think a lot of people do believe it. We even had a boo, I don't know if that picked up on the feed, in the room.
Yes, it did, yeah.
At Keir Starmer's assertion that Reform had wanted to see Jaguar Land Rover fail, a boo just rippled out across the conference hall there. And interestingly, not many mentions of the Conservatives, in power a year and a half ago, totally irrelevant in the eyes of Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party now, apart from, of course, Liz Truss, who crashed the economy, and they would love to mention that at every moment. But yes, that Churchillian rally cry, we will never surrender our flags, and talking about immigration as well in really frank terms. Keir Starmer obviously having a very difficult conversation with people in his party about that, saying that it's a reasonable demand to want to control our borders, and that Labour have actually patronised people on this topic in years before.
Yes, and they have, and they absolutely have. But on that, you mentioned the sort of penitence towards businesses for the national insurance stuff. I think he was also showing a bit of penitence about what was the lady's name? Gillian, with Gordon Brown, when he described
Gillian Duffy.
He described her as a horribly bigoted woman or something, a dreadful bigoted woman. He talked about a woman he'd met in Oldham who felt she had to prove to him with a photograph of her Asian neighbour at a wedding before she could say, but the newly arrived Eastern Europeans are not respecting the area. She had to prove she wasn't a racist before she could be heard by Labour. That to me felt like quite a watershed moment as well.
Yeah, definitely. There is no way that woman that he used in Oldham was a coincidence on that front. No. Definitely, that felt a little bit pointed and a little bit like he's trying to separate himself from Labour Prime Ministers of the past. And the Tony Blair-esque promise of 50% going to university, distancing himself from that, distancing himself from Labour's previous promises on immigration, really trying to set out that clear differences in what he's trying to do from other Labour governments. But really, Sheila, is this going to be enough? We've heard a very nice speech. I'm sure we will hear from cabinet ministers all day about how wonderful it is. I'm sure we'll hear from Labour Party members who hear how wonderful it is. Is this enough, though, to put those doubters off? Is this enough to put those doubters off both in the party and in the country? Labour doing incredibly unwell in the polls. Keir Starmer, the most unpopular unpopular Prime Minister ever in the history of Ipsos Mori polling, which is a pretty big statement to make. Are we going to be here in another 12 months' time where Andy Burnham is again saying, actually, I told you so, we did need to listen to my criticism? It's fair to say he's been a total flop at this Labour Party conference. Most Labour MPs have completely dismissed
the scene was set for that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it has. But is he still the right man to lead that fight to Nigel Farage, to lead that fight to reform? I think this speech will have done a good job at trying to convince some of the doubters. But we're going to have to wait and see about whether people actually in the country are actually appreciative of what Keir Starmer's actually going to do, and then they believe that he's actually this vision of wonderful land of milk and honey. Is he the man that's going to get you there? I think that's the question we don't quite know the answer to yet.